situation is with the constitutional amendments. Have you got an agreement about whether...
But to create new government without the approval of the parliament. This article appeared in Georgian constitution in 2004. For some of you, well-known constitutional reform of February 2004, which happened, and my party split it from national movement then. That was the major reason, because many changes were not correct then. The Venice Commission, which is the main consultative body on these issues of the Council of Europe, had a very negative opinion on that. Since 2004, they were reminding the government that this article is not consistent with democratic standards. But it was there, and people thought that, well, okay, it's there. Who cares about that? Because when there's one-party system, one-party people are everywhere, then this issue was not so important. But as soon as the election resulted in the Georgian style of cohabitation, where cohabitation happens not between executive and legislature, which are in hands of different political centers, but when part of the executive is in hands of one party and the other part of the executive is in the hands of the other party. According to the Constitution, 90% of executive power is located in President's hands. The political reality, which is after October, is just the vice versa. 90% of real power is in hands of the Prime Minister, but he cannot do anything without President's signatures, as well as he cannot appoint, or we all cannot appoint ambassador in Washington. Although he is elected, he went through parliamentary scrutiny and so on. So, in this situation, there was one more thing. Georgian Constitution says that the President cannot dissolve the Parliament within 6 months after the election of the Parliament. And he cannot do so within the last 6 months of his presidency. In Georgian context, that meant that there was time period from April 1 to May 6th or 7th when this could happen. So this was kind of window of opportunity to grab back the power. Well, it happened that this issue was highly advertised in Georgian media. The UNM and the Saakashvili supporters who saw that their party activists and party supporters were switching the flow, which happens every time when the political party, which is merged with the public state institutions, loses power. It happened in Georgia many times. I hope this time it will not result in destruction or this dismissal of the party at all, completely. But in order to stop that process, the people needed to be given some hope. And there was quite intense propaganda on the ground that let's wait until April, something will happen, like this. Okay, just wait, just wait. This was heard and understood by our supporters as well. So Georgian people became obsessed on this April, that something will happen. The idea of the Prime Minister was, when he suggested to the President this amendment, let's make this move together and calm down the society, to tell them that there will be no April or March or June when things could be reversed. Rather, it could be elections, presidential at the end of this year, and later elections in next year, local, and so on and so on. Plus to that, this, let's say, political weapon, dismissal of the government and appointment of the new one, well, it's just not the right thing to be kept. Saakashvili was telling that he is not going to use that. Unfortunately, we and Georgian people, and probably some of you, have different memory about declarations and actions later on. Therefore, the idea was to do this together as joint political project and manifest by that the cohabitation. That election results are not only recognized, but accepted until the next elections. And let's do it together. Unfortunately, the President did not share this. Therefore, we, the majority, initiated this one amendment only to the Constitution. According to the law, it needs to go to public hearing for at least 1 month, and then we can continue for parliamentary procedures and so on and so on. But in the middle of this process, there was another initiative, which again, Prime Minister suggested the President, he suggested it and back, and to activate bigger amendments, which the UNM adopted in 2010, but enactment date is set inauguration day of the president at the end of this year. And these amendments in 2010 were made in order to shift the power from the president to the prime minister, but to activate it only after Saakashvili completed his presidential term. It's up to you to judge what was the reason of such shift of the power from president to prime minister. But we have this text in the constitution, but enactment is delayed until the end of this year. So another way prime minister suggested was, if you agree, Mr. President, let's activate that model now to shift the power really to the prime minister, or to make the reality and constitutionality something in line. And with that, the issue of dismissal or not dismissal the government would be disappearing as well. This happened through private communication. Now I must disclose this. And Prime Minister said, you can suggest it to me, that instead of this one thing, let's do other things as well. Plus to that, according to that model, for amending the constitution, 3/4 majority is necessary. Now, 2/3 is necessary. So with increasing the majority for constitutional amendment for future, was crystallizing the UNM opposition inside the parliament. So they would get real power because, you understand why. Saakashvili shared that, and he invited for negotiations. I went to him, and then with Mr. Bakradze and some other leaders of the UNM, we spent 2 weeks and came to the agreement on everything, including putting in Georgian constitution the language about Georgia's foreign policy priorities, that we will enter to NATO, we will not enter to CIS, and so on. This was demand of the opposition. On that, Ivanishvili said, we don't think that these are the things which usually are in the constitution, but if that's your demand, okay, bring whatever text you think is appropriate, we agree. Only thing is, please consult with the EU and US ambassadors and NATO mission, not to write there something too unthinkable. We came to the agreement on that. Text was ready, but then the issue of the amnesty jumped up. What kind of amnesty we should do? Since then, the president is denying that he ever requested any amnesty. That's not correct, I must say, because in the next week they will be voting on the constitutional issues, and people must know truth, although I have no desire to talk about this endless. The first version which they requested was unconditional amnesty to everybody from the president, including, until the lowest level public servants, but leaving aside the crimes like murder, rape, and crime against humanity. So, for that, everybody could be held responsible, but for everything else, the whole criminal code, amnesty for everybody. We said, no, we cannot do this. Rather, we suggested different model, that everybody but 1,500 top officials who are subject of the law on conflict of interest in public service could be amnestied as they suggested, for everything but the rape and so on. But for those 1,500 officials, let's create the so-called individual amnesty, when if criminal case is opened against somebody, that person is given a choice. If admits the crime, there will be no criminal sentence, no criminal records, and he is free. If does not admit, then the criminal justice will be continued. So on this issue, we did not agree. Their latest version was that let's leave without amnesty president, members of the parliament, and members of the government only, and apply this unconditional total amnesty on everybody else, which was not acceptable as well. Because I'm talking about amnesty about all the crimes. It's not about one crime or something, just whatever they could have done during the period until October 1st. So, because we did not agree on this issue on February 19th, the answer from the UNM was that then we are withdrawing our preliminary agreement on the text of the Constitution. That's how the process ended then. After that, after 2 or 3 weeks from that time, we made an announcement saying that, well, okay, we tried our best, and now it's time to vote on the original version of our suggestion, which is this one article. And that is going to be voted in the next week, most likely, on March 20th or 22nd and so on. We never heard by anybody, any experts or even from the UNM representatives, that this article is something good, it should be there, and it increases stability or something like that. What will be the results of the voting? I don't know now, but that's the story, that's the issue, and if tomorrow the national movement will come back saying that, okay, now we are on the same page where we were but then disagreed, and let's activate the whole Constitution of 2010 model, our answer probably will be no. Not because we are not willing to do that, because this will be delaying the process for another 2.5 months. Because this our amendment is already initiated and is in the parliament. We can vote for that in the next week. If we come back to the other possible way, which was abandoned in mid-February, then we need to initiate it from the beginning, and the procedures would take 2.5 months. And this April, which is there as something mystery, especially after UNM announced on April 19th nationwide demonstration on Rustaveli Avenue, and so on, it's forcing us to vote on that. So sorry, this is a long answer, but there are so many.
Thank you very much. Let me open it up to all of you. There is a microphone, and please introduce yourself. Who's okay, here in the second row.
Hello, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for having this discussion here. I have...
Can you introduce yourself?
Oh, I'm Ketevan Shubitidze. I actually used to work for Gaila a while ago. My questions, it has several parts in it. Number one, with this increased scrutiny about the cohabitation, what safeguards could be placed in place, if you think, that could avoid criticism, such as recently there was this university was closed down, and of course the people on the other side, the former, those who are associated with UNM, it is easy for them to say, oh, this is political persecution, but for things that do look like political persecution, maybe in the interest of the country, it's better to somehow avoid jumping to arbitrary judgments, or if they are even arbitrary judgments. And another question, it's also a tough question, but personally, I think many people would relate. What do you think with, in regards to the prison abuse case and its investigation, the fact that the main person who was involved in it is Pedukadze, he was released on bail, and I think there's too much publicity about it, and how do you think, I know the courts are not, you're under the parliament, but how do you think the courts will handle this case? And I just hope this will not become another Girguliani murder case for this government. Thank you.
Should I take? Yeah. Safeguards for not doing some wrong things again when the power is changed. Number one, safeguards must be internal, and we, the coalition, must do a better job in order to convince the people about what we are doing. Nobody else can do this job instead of us, and that means that the law enforcement agencies, politicians, everybody who are responsible on decision making on different levels need to improve this. Unfortunately, we sometimes, or probably even often, are under the pressure of this for being so long in the opposition. Sometimes we are forgetting that we are not anymore in the opposition. We are the responsible people, and sometimes our speeches or our statements are in that line, criticizing or I don't know, fighting with somebody, but well, okay, wait a minute. It's our job to convince people better when some questions are raised. However, of course, it's not enough, and we are seeking for internal mechanisms of safeguards. Prime Minister requested and the European Union, High Representative for Foreign Affairs, Catherine Ashton, appointed a special person, Mr. Thomas Hammerberg, who is one of the most prominent human rights activists, affiliated with Amnesty International in the past, and his last job was High Commissioner on Human Rights of the Council of Europe. He is placed in Georgia. He has access to every office, and he's there to monitor and to advise about the standards of the democracy or whatever, prosecution procedures and so on. This is very important thing because we want people to be there and to see what's going on in real life. Plus to that, ODIHR, OSCE institution, started monitoring of the court trials, and that's going to be additional mechanism. We adopted law which opened the courtrooms for media. It was closed since 2005, and now media has full access to the court trial, and of course it has some problematic issues, but we decided that now transparency is higher priority than the other considerations. And we are urging all the international organizations to be more active. We had a meeting with the Freedom House people, Mr. Kramer, and we are urging him, if it's possible, to send mission to Georgia about observing the situation in the fields where Freedom House is usually doing things. So that's the measure of transparency, but again, no external tools could be effective enough if we do not do our job better. About the university stuff, agrarian university, we learned this here. At the moment, I have only questions, no answers. But no, it deserves better explanation. What happened, and as soon as we got back, we will try to see what's there. About the prison abuse and so on and these things. Yeah, they are under investigation. Unfortunately for Georgian citizens, the video was just confirmation of something which they already knew. It was the international community who probably first time realized that that was happening somewhere. Unfortunately, in Georgia, everybody knew these kind of horrible things. And in everybody, I mean not only people. In everybody, I mean the government as well. It could not happen that just the opposition-minded people were aware of such things. Then there is dilemma, how far we should go in investigation, and where we should end it. We believe we should somewhere stop. Otherwise, we can run in bigger problems for now and for future. About the courts. Right now, there is unique opportunity for court system to become independent. If before the elections, 10 requests of preliminary detention coming from prosecutors would be satisfied by the courts, now 9 requests about preliminary detention is not satisfied by the judge, and people are released on bail. Well, it's bad, good, without judging the judgment of judges. Let's use this opportunity. It seems that it is clear that the court system is not under influence of new government. So what is left? To free them from some influence of remaining power centers of the old government and then keep them independent. It's not easy, but it is real opportunity, and we should do that. And I would agree, I would have no problems if this current court system makes some not very convincing judgments. It's better than something else. Therefore, we are very careful in the reforming of justice. We waited until very moment when the Venice Commission concluded about our plans to reform the judiciary. Their answer is very positive. There was one issue about term of the Council of Justice members, and we found a mutually acceptable model with the Venice Commission, and next week we will start that to make judges independent, not only from politicians, but from their bosses inside the judiciary, chairmen of the court, and so on.
Great, thank you. Yeah, we have a question there at the back.
Levon Taktakishvili, lawyer. I'm interested, I have one question. How are made decisions inside the coalition? It's just a process, how maybe you can describe in 2 words how are the decisions made in the coalition itself. Thank you.
Well, I almost invited you on the meeting of the political council of the coalition because one of the new things Mr. Ivanishvili brought to political life is a very transparent process of decision making, sometimes too transparent. Sometimes we are discussing the very important issues when, well, probably too many people present there. I'm not saying that people or politicians should be excluded from such discussions, but at the same time, some formalization of the process of decision making is necessary. In the case of the coalition, it's a little bit different. It's very open. Of course, we have the political council of the coalition, which is composed by fixed members. They are the leaders of all the 6 parties, plus 1 representative from each party, plus a majority leader in the parliament. So they are about 15 persons, and all the major decisions are made there. If your question really means what is the share of influence of Ivanishvili on our decision making, I'll tell you that, of course, he has big respect and influence on the decisions of the coalition. He is the leader, and he bears responsibility and then must provide leadership. But I'm surprised with his ability to listen people, to be engaged in debates, and sometimes even small issue, it should be like this or like that, could be discussed for 2 hours. And in general, his hobby is to discuss things, to check things from this perspective, from the other perspective. So he likes this intellectual exercise on some issues. Therefore, when I said that sometimes we are losing too much time on decision making, there's great share of Mr. Ivanishvili as well. So he encourages these long debates and discussions on that. But when things comes to decision making process, of course, then we have rules. It's about voting. It's about taking responsibility, and then sometimes, well, I've been in minority, yes. At the moment, there's discussion about who we should present to the Georgian voters in those 3 districts which are vacant because majoritarian MPs became members of the parliament, government. So there were different ideas how to whom to nominate or which party should nominate and so on. And I was hearing while I was coming here that Mr. Ivanishvili made it public, that he says, Usufaშვili is pressing on me and he's criticizing that we should not need more singers and dancers and wrestlers in parliament. We need more professionals, and he's pushing on me that it's enough what we have there. Well, he is almost right, yes. So he takes out such things for public discussion as well. And we are really thinking how to ensure that those nominees are best possible. And it takes sometimes such an open discussion as it was.
Great, thank you. There's a question right at the back.
Hello. My name is Nikki Kazimova, and I'm a journalist from Azerbaijan. And this morning, I was at the U.S. Congress at the hearings before the House Appropriations Subcommittee on Foreign Relations. And there were testimonies from a representative from Azerbaijan and from Armenia. And the representative, not from Armenia, I apologize, but from the Armenian National Committee of America. And in what they have requested for the next year American budget, it includes that 10% of all U.S. assistance to the Republic of Georgia to be targeted to Samskhe Javaheri. And I would like to know your opinion about this as the Georgian official government representative. Thank you.
Samchkhet is one of the very beautiful parts of Georgia, where very nice people live, and I would be glad to see more and more assistance going there without kind of harming the other regions. We have equally nice, beautiful region with equally nice people living in Kwemokartli, where they have a lot of needs, and I like to see a lot of assistance going there. And Mr. Chikovani is raising already his hands that Mingrelia needs assistance as well. I don't think that these kind of things should be decided on the basis of anything other than needs of the people, and Georgian government needs to take care of these people. And first of all, with our own resources, that would be most fair and most reasonable. At the same time, it's Georgian government's job to realize that the minorities who live in Georgia need special care in certain issues. And I can tell you another news which I got just 1 hour ago, when Mr. Ivanishvili had a meeting with the representatives of the regional media. He declared that he is going personally contribute to the building of new mosque in Batumi. For those of you who are familiar with these kind of issues, know that this was kind of heavily debated thing. There is need of such a new mosque there or not, and so on. He said that we need to end the shameful period of history when people were kind of not allowed to follow their religious beliefs. And religious beliefs and religious freedoms, he means all the religious and all possible beliefs. And he made this very strong declaration that yes, he is going to contribute to the building of the mosque there in Batumi. So I believe we have some challenges in these and other areas. It's very difficult region, I would say very complex region, very interesting region, very dynamic. We need to be very cautious about moves there and here. Where you look, there are some possible dynamics which would not be good, not for Georgia, not for those countries. So that's my answer.
We should probably add that I think US Millennium Challenge did spend a lot of money already in Samtskhe-Javakheti.
Yes, there's a beautiful road.
Okay, let's take a couple of questions now. One here.
Thank you. Maya Kay from Voice of America, Georgian Service. I know one of the hot topics still discussed in Georgia is whether Georgia should be parliamentary republic or presidential. I know there are differences in coalition itself, among coalition leaders about this topic. May we know your personal opinion, not of coalitions? Thank you.
Thank you very much for asking this question and giving me opportunity to talk a lot about my own party, Republican Party. The party was founded in 1978. Its leaders later were arrested, were placed in Soviet gulags, and so on and so on. And they are now among the leadership of Georgian Dream Coalition. And they spent years in Soviet gulags for certain ideas. These ideas were joining to NATO, first of all leaving the Soviet Union, of course, joining NATO, establishing market economy, and establishing parliamentary republic in Georgia. That was their dream back in 1978. That's where the name of Republican Party comes from. Some Republicans here in the US may think differently, but that's not the case. Back in 1978, when Georgia was not independent state, and people who were dreaming about independent Georgia, they had two independent Georgia's models. One from 1801, when the monarchy was abolished by Russians, and the other in 1921, when the Republic of Georgia was again abolished by Russia. So debate was about that. We need to restore independence, but what kind of independence? To re-establish monarchy or republic? And founders of our party were in favor of republic, parliamentary republic, and since then we are advocating for that. Therefore, my personal belief or my party belief has nothing to do with any conjunctura now. That's our kind of philosophy. At the same time, together with philosophy, we see the reality, and we are ready for compromises, as we did in 1995 when the presidential model was adopted, because then our proposals were not supported by others, and then we said, okay, let's then make better presidential system than worse presidential system. Now, in the coalition, most of the members share the idea of the parliamentary republic. The amendments of 2010 made by the UNM for some different reasons, not for us, but it shifts towards parliamentary republic, and that's where we are moving at the moment. There's one issue, how to elect the president. According to our Republican Party belief, president should not be elected directly, but at the same time, president should not be elected by the parliament only. We are dreaming about the country when we will have several regional councils, elected bodies in the regions, in Imereti, not in Zestaponi, for Georgians, I mean the bigger regions, and the members of these elected bodies from the region, from the center of the parliament, may constitute the electoral collegium, which could elect the president. That's our belief, because we think that, well, don't go into the details, okay? Of course, we have some arguments why we prefer that. But at the moment, we take into consideration that we do not have those regional elected bodies. And to elect the president by the parliament only, by these 150 members, that's not appropriate. President should be somewhere between directly elected and parliamentary elected people. It should be more than only parliament's legitimacy and less than direct legitimacy from the people. That's one. And second, many coalition members at the moment believe that direct elections with the parliamentary republic, because there are these kind of models in Austria and other places, is better for Georgia. And the final argument, since national movement raised this issue that, oh, Georgian Dream is thinking about non-direct elections of the parliament, we said, no, these elections will be direct, as it is in the constitution. We swear that the next president will be elected as it is now in the constitution, direct elections. What will be done after the real constitutional reform, which we, of course, will be doing, it's better our future.
And how will Georgian Dream select its candidate for president?
How? Well, I hope there will be first internal discussions, then discussions in the public. But yeah, we have some time left, but not much. I believe, so after the elections in those, or by-elections in those 3 districts, which is end of April, or beginning May or so, things could become clear. But yeah, I can say about concrete procedures. The way which we used for nominating our candidates in the majoritarian districts, or way how we created our party list with who is number 1, 2, 3, this will happen.
Great, thank you. Let me get a couple of questions now. Melinda, and then behind you as well.
Hi, Melinda Herring from Eurasia Foundation. I was really heartened to hear your comment about now's the time for the judiciary to become independent. Last month, the Justice Minister came to Carnegie, and she gave outstanding remarks, and she laid out her plan. But I just had one question about that. It seems that there's a real fear that these amnesty cases and the high-profile cases could distract from sort of the nuts and bolts of judiciary reform. How do you prevent the momentum from coming out of the push for judiciary reform, which is super important? Thank you.
Let's take another one from behind. Yeah.
Tata Georgilian, the George Mason University School of Law. Well, I have 2 questions that kind of connected to yours. But first, I'm wondering that how do you think that these prosecutions that are going to be happening in Georgia going to affect on our reputation, and second, also on our attempt to become part of EU? My second question is that, so if these prosecutions are going to be carried out by the judges that we have, considering they have been appointed by the Saakashvili administration. I know that you talked about then making them independent, but how are we going to make sure that they're not going to have too much power, which is going to be translated to something else later on? Thank you.
Answer?
Yeah.
First of all, I rather be happy to see that judges have too much power than anybody else in a given country, in a given moment, in the power system. So if even if this too much power is really too much, again, it's better to have this situation than too much power in the hands of prosecutors and so on. The job of the judiciary or judges are very delicate and very different. They are not allowed to defend their judgments. They are just hidden in their back rooms where they make decisions and everybody can criticize and so on and so on. And they are in front. They make final decisions. And frequently we do not see what was before. I mean, in the prosecution side, in the government side, and so on. Therefore, I personally do not afraid that possibility that they become too strong. And I do not believe that they could be held under influence too long if those who are keeping the influence are not in the government. I don't believe that the opposition is able to keep the control over judiciary for a long period of time. Therefore, the problems what we may have seen in Georgia, and I don't want to confirm or to not confirm this, there could be such problems, it's just temporary. Of course, it is very delicate issue as well, how the cases are handled. Well, one initiative which the majority came up and then finally minority, UNM, Saakashvili's party supported, was introduction of jury system for all public servants for all possible crimes they may have committed. That was kind of alternative way or line given to those and to prosecution as well to have some kind of competition within the judicial system. I'm not in favor of jury system, but since it was already introduced in Georgian system, well, I confess I voted for, although I would never imagine that I would do that in the past. And then this is one extra measure for making some change in judiciary. And how to handle all these problems we have, yeah, it's tough, of course. You know, one of the biggest problem what the prosecutor general is complaining about, it's the qualification of the prosecutors, which they went through during many years. Because, you know, the acquittal rate of in Georgian courts was 0.1% on one hand. 95% of cases were concluded after plea bargaining. So you can imagine what was investigation. It was just catching person, offering the deal, taking to the court, judge votes or signs, that's it. So the skills of gathering evidences, comparing, making high quality picture of possible crime disappeared. And it's big problem, and we see some results of such. And if prosecution recognizes such shortcomings on concrete cases, it would be better. They already did on one case, on Gunava's case about drugs and so on. They said that no, it went wrong. It's tough, yeah, but any forceful administrative involvement in judiciary will bring even worse results.
Great, thank you. We're going to have two questions. Nino Japaridze here. And then in the third row here. Okay.
Nina Japaridze.
Try just one question.
A quick
please.
question, one question. Were you surprised with the specifics of cases that were requested fall within amnesty proposed by the UNM, which, for example, included money laundering as such? And if you truly want to maintain strong opposition in the face of the UNM, do you plan to remove your position of preventing UNM public officials running for public office for 5 years if they do fall within amnesty? That is the language that was reported by media.
Okay, good. In the third row, yeah. Okay.
And Valerie Wattenberg, I'm here independently. My question concerns the idea of truth and reconciliation processes. As somebody who's been watching Georgia switch 30 years to the day, from one administration to the next, there seems to be a lack of ability within the society to discuss the mistakes of any previous administration so as to avoid them going forward. And I don't think this is so much, for instance, you have the Georgian Dream now saying it's their fault. No, it's their fault, but among society members it happens all the time. And it seems that consequently the same mistakes and missteps get repeated and repeated. So I was wondering what you thought about that process idea.
Good, thank you. Actually, let's take one more, just row behind you, Darina. Yeah.
Darina Markozashvili, Syracuse University. I'm interested in the approach that the new regime is planning on taking in regards to the two autonomous republics of South Ossetia and Abkhazia. And what is, let's say, not only your personal party's approach, but the coalition approach and how to work with the autonomous regions, and where does the Federation of Russia play into that? How does that come into the play? Thank you.
Great, thank you. That's going to be all we've got time for because you've got to leave us shortly. So, thank you.
Public officials being denied to hold public office. First of all, it is not about elected offices. No one ever spoke about prohibiting people to run for local elections or whatever elections. As soon as people are aware of some things, of conviction or admission or whatever, it's decision of the people to elect or not elect people. Second, even in our proposal, we had not 5-year ban from public service, but possible ban from 0 to 5-year term. That means that at the moment in Georgian criminal code, you can find such sentence, that together with imprisonment for 3 years of something, a fine, and so on, and then there's possible sentence, prohibition of the taking office in some profession. It could be a defense lawyer, it could be a doctor if he is convicted for killing a person. Then for some years, people are prohibited to take that job. So that's very similar to that. If public officer, let's say, a governor, did this and this and this, and these are just crimes, and we say that, sorry, you will be resting for several years or months, depending from this public office, and in all other things you are free to do, I guess this is very normal. It's not about the party as such. People who talk about the party as such, well, yes, they are talking and they are recognizing that UNM meant public servants or public service or the bureaucracy or the government or the state. That should be disassociated, and political activity of the people and their possible service in public office, it's different things. About money laundering and so on, well, unfortunately there's not enough time to talk about this because for calming down the situation, for stabilizing the situation, for reconciliation of the society and so on, we need to take measures. It's very clear. What kind of measures? We are in process of discussion. Since we failed to reach political agreement with the main vis-a-vis, with the UNM, now we turn to experts community. A week ago, we had roundtable in Tbilisi about transitional justice, about the measures which could be looked at what is the experience of the other countries, what are the least painful, least costly in money terms and in social terms models. We had Ari Nair as one of the great experts in this field, and then some other experts, and we are in search of that, and we'll be glad to hear any suggestions about that. So it's again, due to shortage in time, I cannot go in details, but that's what we want to deal with this as soon as possible, in order to have more time to speak about something else, because even today we are trying to go forward, but again, questions are moving me back. Abkhazia, South Ossetia, again, how it is possible to talk about the prospects if we do not analyze the current situation and what led it, why we get this. We are trying to follow this strategy of strategic patience, because there are hardly any other option left there. The document which I cited, the resolution of the Parliament on foreign policy priorities, has the preamble there, and there we wrote that Parliament reaffirms the unilateral declaration of non-use of force by the President in 2010 at Strasbourg. So by that we wanted once again demonstrate that change of the government in this sense does not mean change, and we are not thinking about another or new or whatever successful war with Abkhazia or South Ossetia or with Russia or whatever. It's not an option. At the same time, we see what's happening there behind the administrative borders. We see the building of the military bases and weapons and everything. Of course, it is very dangerous, very painful, but unfortunately, that's where we found ourselves after the August war. We in Parliament will discuss very soon one small amendment in the law on occupied territories. At the moment, the law says that if somebody crosses this administrative border in violation of the established procedures, that person must be put in jail, period. With our amendment, we say that if somebody is caught first time, she could be fined, and only second time could be jailed. This is a very small thing, but by this we want to show the direction that we don't want to build the walls at the administrative border, which is now guarded by Russian soldiers from the other side, and from this side we would build the wall of very strict penalties, prohibitions, and so on. This wall, well, we believe could only strengthen somebody else or something else, and not the something else. At the same time, pretending that nothing is happening there and let's have free roads there, it's not possible as well. With that, we making this clear the direction. Okay, what else could be done in order to have some possibility of looking around this or over the administrative border, and so on. The issue of possible railway connection with Abkhazia, this is big thing. Some people are criticizing the Prime Minister why he mentioned this issue publicly, because it may generate some not necessary unhealthy debate in the region, because interests of different countries are different about that. Well, his answer is that he respects a lot all the interests of everybody around Georgia and around globe. But at the same time, Prime Minister says we expect something like that from those other countries as well. And when we are talking about our problem and possible solution or possible contribution to solving the problem, we probably are waiting understanding from other countries. At the same time, it's not decision, it's just idea. Let's check what it could do. These kind of initiatives, again, it's not something that it can bring the day of whatever. But that's what we can do at the moment. And one last thing, Zakharishvili, who is Minister of Reintegration, tries unsuccessfully for the last 4 months to change the name of his ministry. But the president is not approving that it's presidential authority. So he wanted to change the name of the ministry and send different signal to everybody. That
reconciliation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That our goal is not just bring back what was taken out from us, and we see that as an object that we need to have it back here. Rather, some different term which tells that we want to find a common ground with those who are there, not just bring them back. Probably we should go back to them. Who knows? I mean, let's think about this a little bit differently, with more respect to the people who live there, who believe something different, who have different story about history, and so on.
Well, I think you'll all agree we've heard tremendous answers to a lot of very, very difficult questions. So I'd personally like to thank our guest for being with us today and to give him a round of applause. Thank you so much.
Thank you.